And what we're going to do, hey Jennifer, is I'm going to start off. Today's training is based on artificial light, and just, Kristen, I'm going to mute you just for a minute. Our training today is on artificial light and general principles of light. I know you guys have been asking for an artificial light training, and I wanted to do it. I'm not an expert in artificial light, so I brought on Kristen, who is here right now, and Erin Parker. She will be hopping on. Oh, she just came on. There she is. She will be hopping on, and I had them send me some of their just like tips and tricks and the equipment that they use, and they literally provided like a wealth of information. So we're going to get started. What I'm going to do is we're going to focus on those principles of light first, and I'm going to run through those. I'll take a couple questions after that. I'm going to ask you guys to kind of hold your questions for the end, just because I think we have a lot of content to cover today. They both, Kristen and Erin, provided so much valuable information, and I want you guys to have a chance to soak all of that in. So I'm going to run through my part. This is recording right now, so you guys can go back because there is a good bit of information. So if you want to go back and read some of the slides, it will be posted in the member vault. And I'll take a couple questions when I finish my portion, and then we'll hold all the questions for Erin and Kristen at the end. I'll unmute them, and we can just kind of chat up until like 3 o'clock or however long their time commitment can be. And just like a huge thank you to them, because as I explained, I'm a natural light photographer, so that is, artificial light is kind of all Greek to me. So let's get started. I'm going to do a screen share. So even when I'm asking them to chat, I am just going to unmute them and kind of show you what they've written up and shared. So without further ado, let's get started. So sorry about that. Just gonna pull up the chat. All right, you guys. So using artificial light and light principles. I just want to run through some of this really quickly, and then I will hop out of here in just a second and take your questions. So we're just gonna dive right in. So I want to focus on some of these basic light principles, because I think it's important that you guys have a general understanding of these next few things. We can take a deeper dive into any of these topics at another time, and I'll take questions on them. But the number one thing to understand is that light literally makes and breaks photos. It's really important to have a good understanding of light in general. I know we've been talking a lot about composition and styling, and last month we did a dive and talked all about manual settings and tones and things like that. But one thing that is super important is just making sure you have the right light, just kind of understanding where you should be in correlation to that light. So you could have the most well-composed photo ever, but if the lighting isn't right, it can kind of make a lesser quality image. So some things to consider, and these might be things that you guys have worked on before. They might just be things that you've inherently picked up. So I'm explaining them, and you might say, oh my gosh, that's something I do, but I didn't even realize it was kind of like a principle of photography. Or it might be completely new to you, and that's great. But some things to consider, the first one is the direction of light. So where the light is in correlation to your subject. Most food photographs are either backlit or side lit. There is overhead lighting and then front lighting, where the light source would be like right in front of the subject. Front lighting is really hard, especially with natural light, just because like if you put yourself in order to shoot the photo, you would pretty much have to put yourself in between the light source and the subject, which would create like a huge shadow. And I just really would recommend either backlit or side lit shots while you're starting out. So backlit, obviously your light source, so it would be either like a box light, an artificial light, or your window would be behind your subject. This is great for like really shiny glossy things like sauces. And I really like it for overhead shots. It creates a really intense photo. And some people only shoot backlit. It creates a certain mood. I generally think that there are more shadows, and shadows are more forefront in the photo. So it's interesting. And side lit is almost like always flattering. And it's great because if you're shooting straight on, you can put like a reflector where a backlight would be and another side light. So you can reduce some shadows. So a side lit photo is always a really great way to go. So your direction of light is where your light is in correlation to your subject. And then we can talk about the distance from your light source. So just how close your subject is to the light. So if you're shooting out of a window, are you like 6 inches from the window or are you 2 feet? So the closer you are to the light source, whether it be an artificial light source or a natural light source, the lighting will be more intense. So as you move away, the intensity kind of falls off, but it falls off into smaller proportions. So if you want more light and it's like a really dark, cloudy day and it's super hazy outside, you might move really close to your light source. But if you don't want a lot of like super direct light, and we'll get into this in a minute, you can move farther away from the subject. And as you back away, the intensity kind of levels out. So that's probably something that you've picked up, even if you haven't heard of it as a principle, but it's just something to keep in mind. If you feel like you're, really, really trying to get more light to your subject, you can move farther away, or you could move a good bit amount away from a light source if you're kind of into that more like airy feel and you have a lot of light on a certain day. So continued. So your height of your light source. So this kind of goes in relation to like distance from your subject, distance from between your subject and your light source. But the closer you are to the height of the actual light source, the more light you get. So for example, if your artificial light is like a 2-foot high box and you're shooting on the floor with your subject on the floor, like you have a board on the floor, you're going to get less light. But if you have your subject on like a 2-foot high table and it's at the same height as your subject, you'll get more light. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, if you're shooting with like floor to ceiling windows, or sometimes if I shoot on the floor, I open my front door because I have a glass door. So I can shoot, with my light source directly next to my subject. But I always like to shoot at like window height. A lower table or like a rolling cart is great for that. Another thing that we can dive a little bit deeper on, and I know this is our question in the group kind of pertain to this, is temperature of light is something to be aware of. We talked about this a little bit last month. If you didn't get a chance to tune in on that, that is recorded and in the member vault. But when I was going through my manual settings, I was showing you guys how I set my white balance. And their white balance is just how your camera is basically reacting to the temperature of the light source that you have. So you'll probably hear a lot of photographers, like especially like wedding photographers, or like family and portrait photographers chat about golden hour. Like they want to get their shoots in within golden hour, and that's at the beginning and the end of the day. The light is at a lower temperature, so there's more gold hues. So in the middle of the day when there's a lot of direct light, the light is at a higher temperature, which is like a blue light tone. So that's why when you're doing natural light, you get a lot of different tones depending on the time of day that you shoot. And if you guys are here, you might be wondering how you do artificial light. And artificial light, obviously the color temperature doesn't really change unless you manipulate something. However, artificial lights do have a different tone or color temperature than natural light source. So that's why a lot of times you'll hear people recommend that you'll use like a blackout curtain, or you shoot really like in a dark room or something like that, because you don't want a lot of different tones coming in. So you have like an artificial light, and just based on some research that I've done, artificial lights are at about like 3,000 Kelvin, when like blue light can sometimes be like 6,000 Kelvin. So it's really different. So that's kind of why you'll see a lot of recommendations that you just stick to one light source. And if you're using natural light, make sure like all of your lights in your home or like in a restaurant are like kind of turned off around you, so you're just getting that outdoor natural light. So, and then Direct or hard lighting versus soft lighting is another principle. This is just kind of creating the look of your photo. Hard, or sometimes it's referred to as like harsh light, it creates like dark defined shadows, which that's definitely not wrong. A lot of people really like shooting hard light. I think somebody that has a really great understanding of how to beautifully shoot with harder, more direct light is Erin with the almond eater. You'll see that some of her photos have like a really defined shadow around them, and she probably shoots them in more direct light. And soft light, the shadows are a little bit more diffused, or if they're not really there as much. And I think a lot of artificial lighting has a softer look, more of like a soft, more as if soft light has been used. So I'm just going to see if you guys had any questions on these basic light principles. Do you guys have anything you would like to add, or anything here? Is this something that you guys have like heard of before? Nothing to add. Okay. Is this new or something that you feel like you've kind of dove into? Okay. Okay, cool. Great. So I just want to talk about pros and cons of artificial light. So artificial light, you can definitely shoot when your schedule allows. It can help you to better manipulate a space. And I think it's a great idea if you guys are shooting off location a lot or doing a lot of restaurant photography, because a lot of times you just don't really know what you're walking into. It might be a darker situation, and you can control how much light you're using, and you can rely on yourself to create an actual environment. So that's a great thing about artificial light. The one thing I want to just kind of warn you about before we go into all this is I've heard a lot in the group that people just want to switch to artificial light because they don't like the light in their house and they can't understand it. But I want to caution you that artificial lighting is not just going to solve every problem. You still need to understand light. I think something that you'll see in Erin and Kristen's work is that they really understand light well, and you'll see that they have a good bit of equipment and they've invested it, they've invested time, they've invested money. I'm a big proponent that you don't need to spend like your entire savings account, but if you're going to do artificial light on a larger scale, and if you want to be booking work like they are, I would say that you're going to need to make some investments in equipment. And you guys, Erin and Kristen, feel free to interject if that's not really correct, but just from the information that you guys sent over, I really think that that's important to know just before we dive in. So you still need to have an understanding of light. It can definitely help you. And it's awesome if you don't have a great space. And I think we should just dive right in. And first up, we're going to hear from Kristen. And yeah, so you totally agree. Okay, awesome. Kristen, I'm just going to unmute you. And if you just want to tell a little bit about yourself and where you got started, and yeah, we will just kind of dive in. I have all of your points written up, and we can just kind of go through it together. I'll kind of lead, but just feel free to interject, but I'll turn it over to you right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for asking for some information on this. So my name is Kristen, and I'm over at Wellness by Kristen, as you have up there. And I got into kind of using the artificial light. I kind of got back into blogging. I blogged years ago and then kind of got back into it, and realized I wanted to focus more on the recipes and using photos, obviously, and work on my photography skills, and still learning a lot. But I was lucky enough, my brother-in-law is a photographer. He doesn't shoot food photography, but he kind of gave me a crash course in just like really basic photography stuff and light. And the problem that I put this, I think, in a little bit about kind of why I moved to artificial light was my apartment just was not conducive. And I think it was a great point that you made, Allie, about the fact that even if you think in your home you don't have the right light, artificial still takes the time to kind of work on it, and get it and understand some of the basic light principles. But I realized that from my schedule, I just wasn't going to be able to practice as much if I was relying solely on natural light where I live. So I switched to artificial light, and really it's been kind of just a, trial and error, along with obviously some, just research and doing some work on, learning different things. But I'm just looking at what you have up here. And yeah, I mean, it's been really great to widen up my schedule in terms of what I have, and able to shoot when I can and kind of fit that in. A couple of things that you also mentioned, are great. I think definitely when you're talking about artificial light is making sure you have a space where you can really get it as dark as possible, because it is really important to like have really no other light source, because it can throw it off a little bit.
When you say throw it off, you mean like with light tones, or like does the image just look kind of funny? Like
it depends on where the light's coming from. So and I think I wrote this up in my thing. We don't have a lot of natural light in general, that comes in. We have like a balcony that blocks a lot of the light coming into our back windows. And the way that living in New York City, you just don't get a lot of light depending upon where your backyard is situated. But what I would say is it can change the tone, or you can get weird reflections depending upon what you have. So using a blackout curtain or just like a dark sheet. I have like a dark tablecloth sometimes I'll also use, over your windows, and then turning all the other lights off is really, really important.
Okay, great.
To get that shot.
That answers the question. So that is why you can't use two different sources. So you really shouldn't use artificial light to boost natural light. Like you shouldn't ever do that because it might mess with reflections and tones.
From my experience, that's what I was taught as well. Just kind of go with the one source. I do have two lights. I rarely use two lights. I do have like a two in my kit.
I think you did have that down in your gear. We'll get to that.
Yeah, so I have that, but I mean, for me, it's just easier as I'm learning too, to kind of just go with the one light.
Awesome. Well, that's really, really helpful. So you have under here in your top tips and tricks that you shoot tethered.
Yes.
And that really helps your process because you can see everything like right in your computer and you don't have to take it off your memory card. You probably shoot less shots. Well, you just said that.
Yeah.
But, and then I do have a link. Kristen was kind enough to put together like a link of all of the photos that she has. So I have that linked below. So we'll kind of, we'll click on that in just a second and I'll show you exactly what her setup looks like, which is amazing. But she's talking about the technology that she uses to get all of that, like the tethered photo right into her Lightroom or Capture One, which you've been using.
Yeah, so, Capture One's definitely new, because Lightroom has been a little buggy, I find, lately with the updates from, OS and all of that. But definitely I recommend shooting tethered, especially if you're learning, just because you can see it on your screen right there, and kind of go, look at it up close. And for me, it's easier to see tones and just, color in general when I'm seeing it big screen as opposed to on my little camera screen.
Okay. That's so helpful. Great. Let me just make sure right here that we don't have any questions. I just used a Canon shot. Okay, Taryn. That could be an option too if you want to do tethered. Okay, great. So Canon also makes a software. So I'm just going to go through. You did list like all of the gear that you have. So, and guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this like document list and I'm going to see how Nicole thinks it's best. Kristen and Erin, I know Erin, I'm going to ask you guys to send me affiliate links though. So if anybody wants to purchase this stuff, we'll use their affiliate links because they were kind enough to do this with me today. So if these aren't affiliate links, I'll have you change, but we'll just go through the list of what you use. This is just her lenses, the light she actually has.
Yeah, and that light is a good size for if you're starting out. It's not a very big light.
Okay.
So I definitely think if you're starting out, I think it's reasonably priced. I mean, again, with everything, it is going to be a little bit more of an investment. but it's a pretty reasonable size. I keep it up all the time. I think I put this in my notes, but I'm kind of lazy at the end of a photo shoot to like break it down.
I do the same thing with my tripod. It's like,
I just leave it up. I'm like, okay, it's fine. So it's still small enough that you can, I shoot everything in our bedroom as my photo studio. So it's able to like stay up and not have to like worry about space. But also portable if you're taking it to a shoot at a restaurant, a restaurant or something like that.
That's great. Okay. Amazing.
And then just those power sinks. Obviously you need to be able to trigger flash in order to work within that with that monolight. And so they're just little attachments. One goes into your softbox and then one goes on top of your camera. And that's what triggers your flash remotely when you're shooting.
Amazing. And you did include a photo of that. So we'll, what that looks like. So we'll kind of move to that in just a second. So reflectors, you just use foam boards, which is what I talk about all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Easy.
And then you have your USB cord. I think it's important that you noted that you needed extra batteries too. Not extra batteries, but for your power sync, and then making sure that cord is long enough, just like little things. Also, guys, like I can't, especially if you're doing restaurant shoots, like more batteries. And if you're shooting tether, then you're fine. But more batteries and SD cards, always a good idea. I've definitely shown up on location before and my SD card broke and I literally had to go to Walmart, and you definitely need extra batteries for like everything. So just it's a little side note tip, but
always good. And also if you're tethering, I wrote that make sure your USB cord is long enough, because there's been many times I've almost yanked my computer off something. So just be
that's
extra
a great
cautious.
tip.
Yeah.
So you have dark curtains, blackout shades, you use a tablecloth too. So if it's later in the day, you don't really need it. Like if you're shooting at night, you don't find you need it.
No, definitely not.
Okay, great. So then I'm just going to navigate right here to your amazing dock. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
So there's your tether.
Just the tether into the USB port.
What it looks like inside your camera. So there's your power sync. So I've actually never seen that set up. So that's really neat. So it attaches at the top. And then here you go. So that's what triggers your flash.
That's that's the receiver, correct? Okay. So that's going to be in the back of your softbox.
Very cool.
That will trigger it.
That's amazing.
And those are the ones that need batteries quite often. Especially if you forget to turn them off. Again, kind of things at the end of the day you forget to do.
Great, because if people decide to learn to do this, it's important to know.
Yeah, so definitely those, just keep batteries around for those.
Okay, so you like the side light, which is great to note that like even if you're using an artificial light source, you can't just like pop it up and expect that you can't place it. And you can see there she has her light at the same height as her table. So she's getting a lot of light here. It's side lit, but she's also got a reflector here and here. So you'll see I am featuring a couple of her photos in our PowerPoint, but you'll see that her photos are like really well balanced and like airy, and there's like a little bit of shadowing enough to give some definition, but this is what really helps with her photos and why they're so crisp and the lighting is so well balanced, because she's lighting it from the proper angles and direction.
Yeah, and I definitely like side light, especially working with the light. Backlight is great too. I think it's a little harder sometimes to work with, like you mentioned. So definitely while starting off with the light, definitely side light has really helped to kind of like learn more and kind of look at the angles and all that in the shadows.
Awesome. And let's see. So this is your softbox, power sync receiver.
And you can adjust the light obviously based on, how much light you want in the photo. So you can either put it on full, or you can kind of change it to be prop. So you can adjust that. If you're looking for softer, if you're looking for brighter, you can do all that from the back of that.
Do you have a standard that you really like for your like look of your photos, or is it just depending on the day?
It's usually pretty bright and kind of full mode, but sometimes I find that if I'm shooting something specific, either the prop that I'm using, if I have a lot of white, it might need to be lower just so that it's not bouncing so much and there's not so much reflection. It really depends upon, I like bright light though. So for sure, like I play with it, but for the most part, it's usually pretty high.
Awesome. Okay, so inside the softbox.
Yep, and you can see there's like a reflector inside the, which helps with highlights and just making sure the shadows are good. So that's inside, and then there's a diffuser over the front.
Right,
Right. And then sometimes I'll put a sheet too if I feel that I need
Oh,
even more diffusing. Very
right.
rare, but sometimes depending upon, again, if there's something really shiny in the photo, I'll put like another small, like really see-through kind of sheet across.
Right. Yep, I have some of
Yep.
them too. That's what I put over my window, and I have doubled up before. I put like a
Yep.
trash bag and taped it on the inside of
Oh
the
yeah.
window. Yeah, and then put the diffuser curtain over top if I'm, yep, that's a great idea. So that's a full mode.
That
And
would be full mode.
you're,
Yeah, that's full mode. It's pretty bright. And again, also what you're playing with in terms of like your all the settings on your camera and your aperture and all of that will also help with kind of seeing how much you need your light
okay,
adjusted.
I gotcha. That's really neat. And then here you are tethering.
Yeah, I just didn't know if anyone had any questions about tethering. So again, this is just in Lightroom Classic. Just open it up and obviously go into start a new tether. And then when you get to kind of the screen, I just like your naming. I put this all locally until I'm done with the project, and I put it on my hard drive.
Okay,
But again, it does really help to not have to like change out memory cards for me.
right.
So this is just the system I've developed.
That's awesome. So I'm just going to scroll down through here so
Sure.
everybody can see. And if you want to come back, I think this is the end of our document. But this was really helpful. So thank you for doing that.
Of
I'm
course.
just going to close out here, and then we're going to look at some of your beautiful work. So these are, I'll just click present here. These are some of my favorite images of yours. So were these both shot with like full light or not, because there's so much white?
They definitely are on the higher side of full light.
Okay.
They might be adjusted slightly, but they are pretty bright in terms of how high. Usually, I'll shoot in full mode, and then if I find that I need to adjust it, I'll take it off and put it where I can adjust the light.
Okay. What I love about like artificial light is that so she still has her definition between her whites here, but there's not a whole ton of shadow, especially here. I just think this is beautiful. She was able to get like a really nice amount of like highlights or reflection off of this glass. I just think these are like really, really high quality photos. And she's done a great job here. Beautifully composed, and the lighting is just awesome. So great job, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'll open up, if you guys have some questions for Kristen, I'll open up at the end. Let me see. How do you manage the glare on the glass? Do you want to answer that one really quickly?
Yeah, I'll answer that real quick. Obviously, it's not actually in that photo, which, you know, we're all our own worst critic. That frustrated me because there is still glare on that one, but I kind of had to
I
go
like
ahead.
a little bit of glare.
Yeah, I feel like it makes it natural. It seems like there's something there. What I wound up doing, and I didn't like how the photos composed looked, so I didn't use them, but sometimes that extra diffuser will help,
Okay.
kind of helping just make the light a little softer. The one thing with that size light that I have, it can be hard, so you do need to get a little closer, I find. If I
Okay.
move it away, it just seems a little too
Yeah.
distant in the
Yep.
photos. So just definitely like either I'll move something. It was hard because those are obviously full glass, so it's hard to kind of totally get rid of the glare.
Mm-hmm.
But just another diffuser, or trying to move it away until I miss that light, or I need to bring it back a little bit.
Okay. Do you ever find yourself, Taryn, I know for myself, if I position myself 45 degrees instead of like 90 degrees for my subject, if I come in a little bit and almost shoot on a little bit of an angle, I can kind of make that reflection happen a little farther back,
Yeah.
like you have. Taryn, that kind of helps me a little bit. So I don't know if that's something that you've done, moved like your positioning. Sometimes that 45-degree angle can help.
Yeah, I think the angle can sometimes also just be a good way to kind of try different things and see.
Yeah, it was Jess that mentioned sometimes we're restricted by a client shoot though. Oh, so the exact angle. I think she's kind of meaning like your position though. Like if the subject is here, instead of standing here, you can kind of stand right here. So you can still be shooting straight on at a 45-degree angle or overhead, but you can kind of position yourself to the side. If that helps you a little bit, Taryn, it's kind of like your positioning and instead of the actual angle of the camera. I hope that's helpful. Does that explain it a little better? Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. Well, that might, though maybe adding another layer of diffusing might really help there too. That's probably a really good place to start. But thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you.
I'll just unmute you at the end if anybody has any questions, and you and Erin and I can kind of talk. But now we're going to introduce Erin, and I will unmute her, and we'll just keep rolling. So, where's Erin, are you good to chat and introduce yourself?
Yes. Hey guys, I'm Erin.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm the person behind the Speckled Palette. A little background information. So I was a newspaper photographer for years before no longer working in journalism, and I just kind of stumbled into the food blog thing and have used some of the skills that I used in newspapers, but mostly just kind of had to figure out on the fly with the food blogging thing because it's a different beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when did you start with food photography?
So I started the Speckled Palette in the late spring, early summer of 2011.
Okay.
And it actually coincided with a move. We moved from Nashville back to Baton Rouge, and I actually started working again at an arts and entertainment magazine where they were like, hey, we know that food isn't your specialty, but we need somebody to shoot food. So like, if you could help us with that, that'd be great. So it was kind of a twofold thing, like figuring it out for the blog, but also figuring it out for a client at the same time.
Oh, wow. That's a really amazing opportunity. I'm going to flip into your next kind of slide here. Just kind of what moved you to focus on artificial light. But so when you were learning there, were you working with artificial light in like the studio at the office, or was it more natural, or was it more like on location?
Oh no. So I was doing all natural light.
Okay.
So with the blog, like our kitchen at that house had like an entire wall of windows. It was great because everything was beautifully lit like all day long, and it was great. And then for the newspaper or for the magazine, like I was able to make it work. So there were some situations where I was like, I feel like I had a flash, but I didn't really know how to use it that well. Like I'd had to use it for the newspaper in certain instances, but I always felt like my arm had to be twisted for me to actually use it.
Okay.
So it was just kind of one of those things that I was like, I was very resistant to it until we later moved. I was no longer working at that magazine. So like all that food stuff was done with natural light. And quite honestly, I look back at some of it and I'm like, oh man, it would have been better because like some of those restaurants were really dark.
Oh yeah.
And it would have been a whole lot better if I'd figured out how to light stuff myself then, but was just totally resistant to it. And just, I guess, as I said here, like we replaced the windows in our house, and we went from having really great light to like no natural light.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I know. Yeah. The new windows, just like we had windows from the 50s, and the new windows like just blocked out so much sunlight, which is great, I guess, for the inside of your house, but we just did not get the light that I wanted anymore. So I had part of like what I use to this day to light stuff. So like I had an off-camera flash, and I was like, all right, like if you want to keep doing this, like you need to figure it out, because like getting angry at the fact that you don't have any light like isn't really serving anybody.
Right.
So yes, that is what I did. Hold on for just a second. My daughter just called. Sorry.
No, take your time. This is what we do. It's okay. Okay. So here's why you love it. Your off flash whenever you have a minute. Totally get it.
Okay, no, I'm back. She said. So I love to shoot artificial light because I'm no longer tied to the sun. And that's important because I have 2 little ones at home with me. And our daytime schedules are generally bonkers. So I can't I can't rely on that, but also I like to be able to control it completely. And so I shoot with an off-camera flash. So it's like the flash that you would purchase, like that attaches onto your camera. So it's not the one that like pops up.
Okay.
It's one that's kind of like an add-on, and I can turn on my camera and show y'all if you want to see what it looks like.
Sure.
But basically, okay.
Here, I can pull off the screen share for a second.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. No, I think it would be great.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Hello. All right. So,
oh, very cool.
This is what the flash that I'm talking about looks like. And it generally, you can move that, but it's called a speed light. Like Nikon has their own version. Sony has a version. Like every brand has a version.
Okay.
And yeah, so basically it just like you can attach it to the top of your camera, but you can also have it be a completely separate thing.
Great.
So, and I already had that from my journalism days. So I was like, let me just figure out if I can make this work. And so
you did.
Yes. That's what led to
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's important. And you sent me all the links to all of your products. So you guys will be able to like browse, basically like shop their shop, shop what they have. So that's your off flash camera, and you like it because you can control it completely. So yeah, is there anything else you wanted to add there?
Just what I've found, so I have video lights too that are like the consistent lights that shine. And I don't like shooting with those as much. Like I'm also one of those people, like my camera is 11 or 12 years old now, and it's like still kicking. But because of that, I like to shoot on 100 ISO. So, and yeah, so I also handhold. So it's kind of one of those things where like, I like how I can turn up the strength of the flash if I want, or I can turn it down if I want to make it moodier. But I found the video lights aren't strong enough for me to really handhold and feel confident while getting like the aperture that I want.
Okay. That makes definite sense. So we've been talking a lot about ISO. So what she's saying is that she finds because her camera is a little bit older, when she bumps up that ISO, her photos are probably grainier and they're just not as great quality. So she likes that this can give her more control, so she can have that ISO just at 100. You get probably a really high quality image that way. Mm-hmm. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like it to be as crisp and clean as possible.
Yeah, and we'll look at some of her photos. We just talked through some of this. So off camera flash shooter. So you've got the transceiver attached to the hot shoe of your camera. So you guys can we just kind of talk through this about when you had it from your newspaper days. And like I said, if this looks like a lot of information, you guys can always come back to the training too and look through. So like we were kind of talking about with Kristen, it was a little bit of an investment, but you like the consistency. Since you're booking like work and doing things like that, it's just something that's probably really important that you have the gear that works for you. So I definitely appreciate that. So talk a little bit about what you were chatting about with light temperature here. And do you find the same thing as Kristen, that you really need like a dark environment when you're shooting as well, and that you don't really like to just like enhance natural light?
So I don't enhance natural light at all. Like everything that I shoot is like any light that you see in my photos is from the flash, like minus the one off. Yeah. Like I'll sometimes see, like, I don't really shoot in my office if the lights are on, but I'll find if it's night and I have to have the lights on, like you'll sometimes see like the one off like reflection, like from above. But it's very rare. Like I guess the nice thing about the flash that I use is it is strong enough to where I can shoot in and we recently moved and our new house gets a ton of really wonderful natural light, and I still use the flash.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But because of that, like I can shoot, you know, when it's high noon or in the afternoon when the sun is coming in, and the flash can drown it out. It's strong enough.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't have to. And I guess like my setup is very similar to Kristen's. Like I have 2 reflectors. I can also take pictures of these for y'all and like share them so that just everybody can see.
Perfect. Yeah.
But yeah,
we're
like,
going to do it like a wins thread and just kind of a follow-up thread. So anything you guys want to share in there is amazing. And I kind of want to see some people set up, since that's what we were talking about last month. So we can do that in there.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, that's great though. So you use 2 reflectors. Do you normally shoot side lit, backlit? It depends on what you're going for.
I generally shoot side lit.
Okay.
That's generally like my setup is I always shoot with the light, or well, now I always shoot with the light basically to the left of me, my reflector to the right. And
Okay.
Yeah, that's just my setup and what
That's
seems
your
to work
setup.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's so weird. I just realized that my light is always to my right, which is weird because I'm left-handed, but anyway. So this is your gear. And these are, if you're looking at these, I will come up with the doc and we'll post our affiliate links in there because she's been so kind to send them, and we'll do the same thing for Kristen. And I'm really glad you included those. We can all support each other with affiliate links. But this is everything that we were just chatting through, just as a list. And yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing. Amazing. What lens do you normally use? Is that?
Oh no, I didn't send that. I use the Canon 24-70.
Okay. Awesome. I know that one's really, really popular.
Yeah.
So,
big fan of it.
awesome. So let's show off some of her. Oh my gosh, I just love these so much. But you'll see similarly, you know, she's got some shadows here, but they're not as intense as natural light. And she's probably been able to manipulate them a lot, especially for the vibe of her photo. You'll see there's like a little bit more by this ginger beer here, but this like light and bright photo, she's really able to like control the reflections. I just think these are like a great representation of like what artificial lighting can help you do. And it's just like a very even distribution of light. So your work is gorgeous, both of you. And I really appreciate your time. Yeah, I'm just gonna, it looks like we've got a question. Erin, I'm gonna leave you, I'm gonna stop our share. Erin, I'm gonna leave you unmuted. And Kristen, I'm gonna unmute you. And it looks like, Kristen mentioned that her preferred ISO is 100 as well. So that's great. So, all right, it looks like Taryn has a question, how steep the learning curve was when you switched. I'm interested in learning that too, because I probably should dabble a little bit one of these days, and it's interesting to hear how long it took you guys to feel comfortable. So if you each kind of want to just pop in and we'll chat about it, and yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Kristen, or should I?
You can go.
Okay. So I don't feel like it was really terrible once I actually started like seeking out like resources.
Okay.
I found, so when I was figuring out how to do off-camera flash and like artificial light, like back in like 2014, early 2015, there's this guy who is a food photographer in Alabama whose name is Taylor Mathis. His website is Photographing Food. He, at the time at least, had like a series of ebooks that were really fantastic, and I read all of them. But I think he also has a YouTube channel now. I'll have to look that up and see and share that with y'all.
I have it. I'll write it down and I can research.
But yeah, he was like just reading, and like he, for a while there, he had a really active blog where he talked about shoots and how he lit different things because he's a restaurant photographer. So I just kind of like clung to all that knowledge and just kind of started playing with it.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it took nearly as long as I maybe thought it would. And like once I had kind of figured it out, it was like, well, like it wasn't really that big of a deal. Like, you know, it took some like capital to get started, obviously. And it took, you know, like I had to invest in myself to kind of figure it out, but it's been worth the investment and more because I can shoot in the middle of the night if I so choose, and get the same looks that I would as I would in the middle of the day.
That's great.
Yeah. So Yeah.
And did you feel like knowing, like just general, like principles of light, like I was talking about earlier, you know, for someone who already is a food photographer, it really is just like the mechanics. If you still understand how to use and incorporate light into your photos, you think that it helps a little bit?
Oh no, it certainly helps. Yeah. If you know, like if you can make a photo with natural light, you can make a photo with artificial light. It's just about, because I think my holdup was like the techiness, because I'm not really like a tech person. Like that's not, I don't really like to tinker with that stuff. Like I like to stick with what I know.
Yeah, I get you. I think a lot of us are like,
yeah,
you learn it, you're like, I'm just gonna stick with it.
Exactly. But you know, like once, like, because you can apply all the same principles to the artificial light. It just takes a little bit of tinkering. But yeah, it's
great.
Yeah, it was a good thing.
Kristen, do you want to speak to that a little bit? How long it took you?
Yeah, I mean, this is all new to me. So photography in general I was kind of learning the basics, which I think learning some of those, like you said, Erin, and Allie, definitely helped, just looking at the light as I'm going through it. But for sure, I think if you take the basic principles and then apply it to using the artificial light, and just like you said, Erin, tinker. I mean, I've only been shooting with artificial for about a year. And so, I mean, you know, still obviously a lot to learn, but I think just tinkering with it and trying different things. And obviously the fact that you can shoot at night does help. So you have more time to do that. If you're really willing to invest time-wise in your photography. And then I know you mentioned a resource, Erin. I also think, Taryn, you might have been the one who mentioned it, but I've been following a lot more with like the Bite Shot and her videos on YouTube, and like her Facebook group as well, and just posting photos and trying to see kind of the resources. So I think there's definitely a lot out there on artificial light now. And it's just, you know, playing around with it and seeing and having fun. I mean, really, you know, obviously sometimes you're in a crunch because you got to get a photo done, but also just kind of, you know, trying to have fun with it and kind of see and applying those basic principles.
That's awesome. And like letting yourself have the time to just kind of flow through it. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Amanda, do you think it's better to invest in something like artificial light than a better camera? I use a Nikon D3200 with little ones. It's hard to shoot during the day. Amanda, I think that's kind of, I mean, you have a DSLR camera. So Amanda, do you feel like, and you can talk if you'd like to, do you feel like you're not getting work done and like artificial light's something that's been on your brain? Something for me, like when I realize it's time to invest in something is when it's on my mind, like I would say more than 3 to 4 times a week. Like I really wanted to upgrade recently to a tripod because like 3 to 4 times a week I wasn't able to, my old tripod broke, and I was like, there's a couple things in our house where, you know, it was difficult to spend the funds, but 3 to 4 times a week I was like wanting to shoot something with movement or bring something outside or just work on something with like myself in the shots. And I just felt like it was on my mind more than 3 to 4 times a week that I needed to upgrade and get a better tripod. So I don't know if there's like, if you're feeling like more than 3 to 4 times a week that you don't have the time and the time that you have to shoot at night, if you're like a night person, if you want to work, maybe it is important to work with some artificial light and work with the camera that you have. But if you feel like you're able to get it done, but the images just aren't up to the quality that you know they could be, maybe a camera would be better. Do you want to talk that through at all, Amanda?
Yeah. Well, right now, like my biggest issue is one of our air conditioners broke, so we're using portable. So like I had to block out a window. So I have one window shining light through. And I only get light in the morning for like 2.5 hours before it gets, I still get light, but I have to bump up my ISO to at least 800 in order to get a decent picture, which is okay if I'm just shooting for Instagram. But sometimes
for clients in high res with that camera, it's a little too grainy.
It's going to be too grainy. And I'm starting to get offers of work for pictures that are going to be printed. And I'm like, we need better quality pictures. And sometimes I do use artificial, but I have like not a professional setup. I have like overhead clamp lights, and I use a diffuser, and I have some flash diffusers I use on top of light bulbs, and I can make it work. It is the most ghetto setup ever, but I can make it happen. But it's not going to work forever, and not as my photography progresses. And I'm getting more work. I'm starting to get more photography work versus just sponsored post type stuff. Like I'm starting to get requests for actual photography.
Right. Well, the one thing I will tell you is when you're starting to get work, it's probably time to upgrade. I know that's hard, and something that Nicole encourages me to do is just like always squirrel away a portion of something that I make and put it in. Like for me, it was like a fund so I could leave an opportunity, but maybe for you, it's a fund to like invest in something. Because I know it's hard to like spend larger dollars, especially when we have homes and, you know, kids and air conditioning units.
And we're moving in a couple months, so I don't even know what the setup is going to be when we move.
Okay.
So I don't, like, I'm just trying to figure out if I should wait, if I should just invest in a new camera so I can do more video, and I can use my camera works for video, but at least if I have two, then I can do side shots, which I don't do right now because I'm lazy and I'm not filming it twice.
Well, what are you getting more work of? Like, are you getting more video? Or are you getting more photos?
More photos because I don't do a lot of video because I don't have the extra camera. I have a good video setup. Like I have an arm. My husband installed like an overhead arm over my table, so it's really easy to like, you know, do video. And I have tripods and I have all that kind of stuff. Excuse me, I'm on the phone. Okay, right. Okay, go play with your fish game. She's supposed to be in her room.
So is this one.
I have one in my arms and one in the bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
You know, but I have a really good setup. You know, I have a monitor that attaches to my camera so that I can see the pictures right away. It's just like I need better quality equipment, and I don't know if the artificial light would be more helpful because then I could shoot at night when my husband's home. Because I could easily block this other window out completely, and then I'd be able to do, you know, I would have his help. Or if I should just buy the other camera, which, you know, is going to be like $1,300 probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a hard decision.
It is a hard decision. I would say, you know, if there's one that feels like a forefront, if you feel like you can, does it take you a long time to set up that artificial light setup and you feel like you're running out of time?
It's already there. I mean, I just have to mess with it. It's just probably not as good a quality for artificial light as I'm sure it's not as good a quality. Because I have to adjust, like I have to do a lot of adjusting with the white balance, and like once I get into Photoshop, I have to do a lot of editing to make it correct. So it works, but then I'm stuck editing stuff. It always seems to be too yellow, and yeah, I need all of it, but I need to. I was looking at their setup. I'm like, I could do that. That would work really well.
Sure. Yeah, Karen, that's a great question. So do you feel like you spend more time in Lightroom and then setting up the artificial light setup that you're kind of like DIYing, or do you feel like you spend
more time in Photoshop because the setup it's already there. Everything's already. I don't move anything.
Right, but do you feel like you spend more time manipulating images for like tones and things like that because you're lacking light, or do you feel like it's because of your camera? Because I think that
I think because of the setup. Actually, I don't think it's as much the camera.
I think you might have your answer there. I don't know if Erin or Kristen wants to interject based on what they're hearing.
Especially because you said they use an old camera and they just shoot it at a low ISO. That might work.
Yeah, I would just say, and sorry, I'm actually heading into my class I have to teach.
Oh,
but
you're good.
But I would say I actually had kind of like a makeshift light box for a while that I made myself.
I have one of those too.
Yeah. So, and I realized after a while that, you know, for my time and where my time was being spent, and trying to get more work for photos, that just investing in the light was good. And I think what you just answered to Taryn's question about where you're spending your time, if you think that the light will have you edit less, then I think that's kind of in the direction. I mean, my camera is probably 10 years old, I think 10, 11 years old. And it works for right now and based on what I'm kind of getting in terms of projects and work.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, like mine's not old, but it's an older model, basic model. And I just bought lenses for it. Was what I did at the time because that's what I had.
Well, that's great that you have good lenses. That's super important.
Yeah,
I think you kind of have your answer there, though, that it might,
artificial writing.
yeah, sit on it, check back with us, let us know how you're feeling, but, and then I'll post all the resources with them.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll look through those
Here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
One more thing before you hop off, just to add in, I agree with everything that everybody else has said but also one of the things that my photography mentor, who is a photojournalist, told me, he was like, always, 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 like if you're thinking of like purchasing a new camera versus lenses, he told me to always purchase glass. So,
Love that.
just there's that. And it sounds like you've invested in that. So maybe it's time to check out the lighting setup and use that and see if that buys you back time with the editing piece.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
That sounds like a good plan. And I may buy new lenses soon too, but
Well, start with one thing if you've got a lot going on, but it sounds like that might be your answer and you're here today. So I think that probably tells you a lot.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Thanks.
Of course. Of course. Any other questions in our last couple of minutes here, guys? Nope. Awesome. Well, this is been so information packed, and Erin and Kristen, like, thank you guys so much for coming on to help me out. I hope this was helpful. As I said, the replay will be posted in Member Vault, and I will post that in the group once Facebook is up and running, and we'll get together like a product and resource list, and I'll just probably link that as a Google Doc. And be on the lookout at the end of the week. We're going to do like a wins and sharing thread for photography. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Have a good one.